This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And I'm Dave Jewett, here to help guide our wonderful experts through the varied worlds of games and pop culture. And on today's episode, we're going to be showing Jonathan a selection of weapons from Call of Duty Black Ops 6.
Now that looks like a pretty spot-on Set Me Model L.
And it is just called the Model L in-game. It's another one where they've really not changed the name much.
And as I think you can see, I'm struggling to spot any significant differences. And it's beautifully modelled as well.
If you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on next week's episode. If you can't wait that long, you can head to our Patreon and sign up to watch next week's episode on Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl 1 week early. There is also the director's cut of this episode featuring deeper breakdowns and exclusive footage, plus a Patreon exclusive bonus episode of the cursed guns of Black Ops 6. Either way, we appreciate all of your guys' support. Right, without further ado, it is my pleasure to once again say, over to Jonathan. So good to see you, my friend. It's been a while.
Great to see you, Dave. I'm here. I'm raring to go.
What a way for us to start. Shall we jump right into it?
Let's do it. I still haven't played it in the best traditions of this. This format. I still don't know what I'm gonna see.
Oh, I've got some things to show you. Don't worry.
Oh no. All right, first up, and we run straight into this legally different thing again, because I think it's clear to me, and it should be clear to a lot of viewers, what this is supposed to be. It's this thing. It's the AR-18, or AR-180. I've actually picked up a 180 by accident. For those of you who don't know, that's the semi-automatic version. And I think the first thing I notice on this is this magazine well. Very, very straight edge, but angling down at the front. And that's clearly one of the legally different features that the artist has decided to change. It really is a different design. Now that's weirdly appropriate for the AR-18 because it's been knocked off quite a lot. The Sterling SAR-80, the Leader T2 in Australia, even the SA-80, albeit ballpark. Now, fitting it with an M203, I have never seen done, and it's kind of problematic to do. I'd be intrigued to see one with a grenade launcher fitted, actually. I'm sure someone did it.
So they've changed the way grenades work, or underbarrel grenades. In older Call of Duties, if you'd hit someone from close range, it would be like an instant kill, an impact kill. If you shoot someone from an inch away, if you point blank, the grenade will still explode. I was trying to get like a kill point blank with the grenade launcher, just because that's what you do with the grenade launcher in Call of Duty. I ended up detonating myself, and I was like genuinely quite surprised. It's like Call of Duty's made a weird sidestep in terms of the grenade gameplay here.
Yeah, well, as you know, this is a backward step in terms of realism, because the thing doesn't arm for I forget the distance actually offhand, but certainly further out than this, for that very reason, you know. The load is straightforward enough. Magazine goes in, we reach underneath and pop the weapon like that. I think that works quite well. The reload, I'm a bit less sure about.
So the reload when they're using two magazines actually only happens when your first magazine is only partially empty. I'm guessing it's an animation speed thing to make that partial reload faster than the full reload.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But obviously the realism of the methodologies might be a bit flawed or a little tricky to do.
I mean, it's not obviously at this period, people were still jungle taping or mag clamping mags together. So you'd have to withdraw a magazine from the pouch upside down, holding it further down, grasp the partially depleted magazine like this, operate the magazine catch with this finger, pull out the partial, rotate the wrist around, which is not a really like biomechanically happy thing to have to do. Bit of strain there, but doable. The reason for doing it is to allow you to retain the rounds that are in the magazine. Otherwise, you would just strip it out, put in a fresh one. So there's some thought gone into it. It's obviously not based on any manual of arms or pamphlet or anything that is out there, as far as I know. It's kind of thinking a bit outside the box, and it's something that's very plausible for someone to do. Now this is fascinating. This is the AR-10 LMG, or an approximation thereof. And I think it's based on this variant that we have. So here it is. You've got the cocking handle inside the carry handle, which is what this carry handle was designed for, by the way, which means that there's a rod shoots out the back. I'm going to keep complaining about this, but they've changed it up. Now, off the top of my head, maybe there's a version with a full handguard, but as you can see, this version exposed on the bottom, and it goes for a pistol grip instead. But, you know, in reality, as far as I know, nobody actually adopted a belt-fed AR-10. If they did, it would presumably have been changed, and conceivably one of the things they changed is a full handguard. This is really just a sheet metal heat shield over the top of the barrel. It is meant to be an LMG. It's supposed to be firing in the prone position, not really putting your hand up front. I like all the detail of the load. I don't really want to risk jamming a load of inerts through this thing. It's the only one we've got, but it superficially looks plausible as to how they're loading it. We have rear sight syndrome, where the rear sight sticks up above the protective wings of the carrying handle. Oh, and I do not like this. I do not like this.
I thought I was being fairly reserved with this.
You're quite reserved, but there's something deeply disturbing about, like, so the old Black Ops games, we had the carrying handle just chopped off. I think I may have shown one once, but that was done. The ACOG type sight, which isn't quite an ACOG, but close enough. TA-31, I'd have to check as to whether in the year this game is set that the TA-31 was even available. Might have been. It's kind of, I'm conflicted. It's nice to see this thing represented in any way, because I don't think it's ever been done in a game, and it won't have shown up in any other media, I don't think, because there are so few of them around. But it's very bittersweet because, like all the other guns in this game, it's been compromised. This is one of those that I think I saw this in some earlier on somehow, and I thought this was a mashup. I thought they'd made this up. That's not real, and it was. And as far as I know, unissued Russian prototype. It's very Black Ops appropriate. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I was the same. I thought it was, you know, them trying to get an AKS-74U into the submachine gun category, which they've done in Call of Duty games before.
Yeah.
And then you go and look it up and it's like, oh, it's the Gepard. I assume this is one of the pistol caliber variants being in the submachine gun in the submachine gun category. But having something new and interesting and AK-ish in the submachine gun class fits way better for me than just shoving the AKS-74U in because it's small. And when the game released, or when it was in beta, this was the way overpowered.
Oh, really?
Like everyone was using it. Now the game's been out a while, a lot fewer people are using it.
Yeah, it looks cool. I mean, if you only ever saw it firing, you wouldn't really get the advantage of the cool design. But because of the very in-your-face, literally, reloads, you get the full advantage. You get to see the glorious Bakelite trigger frame. It's good. I like it. Now, of course, you could, and they have done, as you say, just put the AKS-74U in the submachine gun category, like you could the XM177, because they historically were classified submachine guns. The problem you've got there is that you have to nerf the damage of the cartridge versus an identical weapon that should have very similar velocity out of the different length barrel, but the same round. You have to make it less effective in game relative to what it should be. This way, in theory, you could balance it like a pistol caliber submachine gun. Technical definition of a submachine gun is a pistol cartridge, but in terms of doctrine, they get designated. Compact assault rifles, if we can use that phrase, get designated submachine guns, which is why that was justified. But I like this approach.
Scout pulse available. That's 5. Archangel ready for use.
So my first thought is Hecate 2, which we have in the collection, but this is its scaled down later relation. Albeit they've put some, and I don't think the Ultima Ratio ever had wooden furniture. I could be wrong, but I kind of like the look of it with it, even if they didn't. And you know it's going to be upgradable and changeable. Sounds punchy. I think you might be forgiven for thinking that this was a 50 cal.
It's a bolt action in a Call of Duty game, so it has that effectiveness if you're hitting someone in the midriff.
Yeah.
You always expect the bolt action to take someone down in one shot.
Yeah, it almost doesn't matter, does it? It's whether it in a game where you're just running around like Rambo with no fatigue and difficulty in using the thing, it kind of doesn't matter. You only know it's a 50 because it's called a 50, and maybe the sound is even more punchy and resonant. But you know, the cloud of claret that emerges when you hit someone with this is probably closer to what you would get from a 50. We've got backup iron sights on this thing, which feels very wrong.
A long scope in most Call of Duty maps also feels kind of useless to me now. The days of me quick scoping on high rise are long gone. And the way the maps are built in Black Ops 6, there's really no point for a really long range scope, and they don't have the big game modes that previous Call of Duties have, like Ground War, to make sniping really viable. In my experience in Black Ops 6, the sniper rifles aren't as handy, aren't as useful or even appealing as in previous Call of Duty games.
Okay.
Maybe that's just the lobbies that I'm getting. Like, no one's super skilled in trying to YY 360 or run around quick scoping, which I'm fine with, honestly. I'm 33 now. I can't be doing that.
Well, not that I was ever competitive with that kind of shenanigans, but I remember getting a comment at some point somewhere that said something like, "Oh, it's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be Call of Duty. You know, Call of Duty isn't realistic. Isn't supposed to be realistic." Well, depends on your definition, doesn't it? It's supposed to look and feel like a military action movie, you know, like a war movie. And that minor immersion is completely shattered if someone 360 no scopes you. And I don't enjoy that, you know.
That's a kill.
Always difficult grabbing a shotgun to wave at you on the camera. I have got the Gucciest, most tactical looking Mossberg 500, for 'tis what this is meant to be, that we have, which is really not that tactical. It's more of a competition, practical shotgun. Yeah, it's got a muzzle device, extended magazine tube, side saddle for spare rounds. But yeah, the thing I'm looking at right now is much more of a kind of what they used to call a riot gun, short barrel, pistol, pump grip, and ghost ring sights.
The thing I wanted to point out with this most of all is the speed reloader, the stick that feeds a bunch of shells in. I don't think I've seen that in a game before.
Well, an admission here, I didn't even know that these stick reloaders were a thing. I assume they were developed for competitive use, although thinking about it, I would have thought the rules would prevent that. They're interesting for sure. Reminiscent of, well, the Spencer, where you have a stick reloader, but it's absorbed, it goes in the butt of the weapon and feeds from that. It's your magazine. it's just a weird form of tube magazine that's detachable. This is, of course, a separate thing. It's a speed reloader, like a revolver speed loader, but for shotguns. Those sort of external feed devices are much less common today than they were in the late 19th, early 20th century.
There's a nice little detail when they're reloading as well, that if you're just topping up one shell, you don't use the speed loader. It's just feed one in. It's only if it's two or more that they end up getting the, I mean, he said getting the stick out, but you know what I mean?
Now that looks like a pretty spot on Setme Model L. Spanish take on, I was going to say the HK roller delayed system, but it's kind of the other way around. Setme were doing it first with engineers from Germany, and then it developed in parallel down two different avenues effectively. And this is directly parallel to the HK33.
And it is just called the Model L in game. It's another one where they've really not changed the name much.
Yeah, it's funny what's deemed okay and what isn't. And as I think you can see, I'm struggling to spot any significant differences. And it's beautifully modeled as well. You've got the weld seams, like that one. Really nicely represented. Hope my camera will focus. There we go. Where my finger is. Yeah, I think this might be my favorite so far. The rear sight aperture has a V notch, which ours does not. And we only have the one. And without looking it up, I don't know if there is a version with a close quarter V notch aperture. There's something very cool and Cold War about this. Partly the green, the stamped metal, the chunky polymer. It's very cool. So the inevitable optic variant now, and that's a bit suspect. We do have polymer rails now. The F2000 has a polymer rail, remember rightly. Usually they're not. Usually, because polymer erodes deforms, flexes more readily than machined aluminium. So you'll normally see a strip of rail screwed on or welded on or integral to a machined metal receiver. Now, because the Sentinel is a legacy design, what you will see, and I think different approaches have been taken, I think they all have a steel rail screwed onto the top here, with the rear sight housing left intact. Here, that's disappeared, and we magically have what appears to be an integral rail that also appears to be molded polymer. So I love the base gun. I'm not so taken with how they've adapted it for an optic.
If you want an even meatier episode, you can check that out in our extended director's cut edition of this episode over on our Patreon. That video is double the length of this one and features deeper breakdowns and an exclusive clip of me showing Jonathan the folding Sirin 9mm. If you're a Cursed Guns fan, patrons also have access to the exclusive Cursed Guns of Black Ops 6 episode, so be sure to check that out. Right, back to the video.
One of the slightly cursed looking helical magazine designs, the PP90M1, really screams Cold War. One of a myriad of bizarre Russian SMGs. The obvious theoretical advantage, nice and compact with a high capacity. The former doesn't really help you in a video game. The latter obviously does. What's the damage like from this thing? It looks pretty potent, actually.
I think it's the rate of fire and the number of rounds you can put down range that are making up for it.
And low recoil?
Yeah, that's definitely an advantage. But there are some slower firing SMGs that hit harder despite, in reality, having a smaller caliber, which we'll get into later. But this is the version that I wanted to really show off. If you customize it to have a smaller magazine or a quick load magazine, you get this variant that's been fitted with parts to allow it to accept a box magazine, which does immediately take away the main advantage of this weapon, of a big magazine. But it's kind of cool that that's a thing.
So why would you do it in game?
Quick reloads is basically the only benefit.
Oh, of course, because you have, if anything, they've protracted the reload on the normal version, haven't they?
Yeah.
To make it a bit more janky and slow. See with the thumb there operating the cocking handle that sticks out the front. That's a real thing. Not something I can show you. And it's got one, fortunately. First world problems. And this is a real thing, by the way. So this is, confusingly, not the first time that the Russians have designed something for a helical magazine and then walked it back and put a normal box magazine on it. Because the Bison, which we do have, was also redesigned into more of a sort of MP5 analog with a standard box magazine as well. And it isn't really clear to me whether that was because of problems experienced with the helical magazine or user preference or just a way to diversify and leverage the platform. God, why did I say that? Turned into a salesman into stuff that different customers would want. I would guess is more likely why they did it.
This is the PU-21. It has the completely accurate name. In real life, it's just called PU-21. In game, it's called PU-21. So this is the first time in a while we've had a real one-to-one name for a new weapon. And this is the first media of any type that this weapon has actually appeared in, which is quite cool.
No, that is cool. So right, just first impression, well, my brain, like everyone else's, is going, why is there a front half of an upside down Kalashnikov stuck to a PK? But this is a real thing. Genuine prototype from the 70s. Very, very cool. Feels like an alternate reality weapon, but is one from actual history. Just didn't get adopted. Oh, the inside of that gun looks good. Feels like a strange thing even for me to say, but it just looks like someone is opening up the top cover on a real gun, regardless of any nitpicks there may be. Not sure about the reload insofar as I don't know the gun at all, really. Yeah, okay, so it looks like it's modeling a system that a lot of belt-fed machine guns do have, where you can actually clip the link, the belt, in place, so that if you are having to load on your own, especially if it's from the hip, you don't immediately have the rounds drop out of the gun before you can slam the top cover down. I would assume the real one has that, or they would have just fudged it for the reload. Magazine feed, if I remember correctly, that is a feature of this weapon.
Yeah, that's the main thing that I wanted to showcase, because again, it's a brand new weapon that we've not seen in a game before, and we've got the sort of Cold War Russian parallel to the M249 in a way. That's sort of where it's fitting, especially with the box magazine functionality too. And it does make it become that super assault rifle I think we've talked about before,
Yeah.
but not quite as bad, I think.
But yeah, the gun itself is cool. No doubt about it. It also feels like, obviously, the recoil dispersion effect is kind of artificial and adjusted to fit with the other guns in the game and how it functions. But in terms of how it looks like the user is having to really lean into it and pull it down and control it. And I think that's very hard to convey. Yeah, your classic first-person shooters, the gun just sits there, whether it's a bitmap or whether it's a 3D model gun. There may be a little bit of backwards recoil and then that inevitable climb up. We're really starting to see things look like they should in their actual use. It's funny that I'm saying that on this one, which I've never seen even fired in a video, but now, what the hell is this? Because I have lost the plot again.
I was actually trying to catch you out with this one. This is a fictional gun.
Yeah, good. So my brain hasn't failed me.
Black Ops 6 have created a, aesthetically appropriate SMG, but it's actually a reference to a gun from Black Ops 4, the futuristic Black Ops 4 that's set in the future.
Oh,
so
no.
we have to extrapolate that this is the original version of the SAUG, which is called in concept art the South African Ugly Gun, which is very so it's very futuristic but like wooden. But if you put them side by side, they do actually look quite similar. But this must be like the first iteration of that gun, because they do have similarities. But this gun is almost entirely fictional.
You have absolutely caught me out there, because I'm so used to being shown things that I may have glimpsed once, or sometimes not even that. I then have to look up or really dig deep to try and remember. And I thought, it's another one of those. I'm literally reaching for my phone to look it up, and no. And I should have damn well known, because there's no way that thing can operate. That bolt is right down on the pistol grip, and the receiver behind it is curved. So there's no way that bolt can come back. There's not enough room, there's not enough clearance, it's just, it doesn't work. Unless there's some kind of reverse inclined bolt system. We have inclined bolts that go downwards. I'm not aware of any that go up a ramp. That would be a negative. So the inclined bolt on something like a rifle is there to drop the stock so that your sights are in line with your eye. The Crisp Vector, of course, does a different form of inclined bolt to give you a recoil impulse that brings the weapon down in the shoulder or in the hands. This would have the opposite effect of that. It would go up a ramp and cause it to recoil upwards. It's nicely designed. Whoever designed this, it's a nice piece of design. It's just, I can't see how it would function. Oh, wow. Wow, that's quite the reload.
Yeah, they've really thrown realism away, both in design and use.
What just happened? So we dropped the drum mag somehow, because the cap is on the bottom of the grip, so that's not really possible. Then it goes off camera, some shenanigans happens, and then it comes back, and we're holding it like we're doing a press check over the top of the gun. How and why are the words that spring to mind, or the questions that spring to mind? Yeah, every now and again, someone tries to market a self-defense pistol that is in a 22 caliber. Now, the caliber itself, diameter of the bullet or the bore, isn't so relevant as cartridge type. Famously, the AR-15 fired a .223 caliber round, but out of a relatively long cartridge case at extremely high pressures and relatively high velocities. So it manages to match up closer to something like 7.62 NATO as a result. These things, because I'm now looking at the sort of carbine SMG. I'm not sure there is an automatic version of it, kind of, or at least they're in the same product range from Grendel. And they're both firing the same cartridge. .22 Winchester Magnum rimfire. So that is 2.2 diameter, but it's a jacketed pointed bullet traveling at significantly higher velocities. Not on the order of 223/556, but enough to potentially be viable. But it's a fairly heavy potentially.
Speaking about calibers and potential damage, what is interesting is that shot per shot, this is the most damaging SMG, or the most powerful SMG in Black Ops 6, despite having theoretically the smallest caliber. It's balanced out, like the damage per second is actually fairly balanced between the other SMGs because of that lower fire rate. But it is interesting that had to play with values and stats to make it viable.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I guess I would justify including it and like tweak it and have it be better at armor penetration in the game or something, but then create less, remove fewer hit points. Because the classic thing with higher velocity, this isn't high velocity, but higher for relative to the caliber, is that it will poke holes that don't necessarily do a huge amount of damage without getting too graphic about it. So should it be doing high damage? No. Should it have a high rate of fire? Again, no, because as far as I know, this is actually semi-auto only. So it's definitely a more viable round than 2.2 long rifle. But why would you not have at least 380? Is probably what most people would say.
You hand it out, you better be ready to take it.
Oh, hello. Is it our old friend, the Pancor Jackhammer?
Or something akin to it.
It's not quite right, is it?
But then again, the original Pancor Jackhammer wasn't quite right.
No. I kind of like this, I have to say. I've never been a huge fan of the Jackhammer.
Honestly, I don't hate it either.
Or as I don't even particularly enjoy it as a game gun, but this might be the most fun version of it, even though it's the most different. I feel wrong even saying that, as you can tell from my rising inflection.
No, I think it's, for all the sins of the Pancor Jackhammer, if this is the most different cousin, this is the one that I'd be most friendly with.
I mean, the more I look at it, without doing a side by side, it's very abstracted. It's somebody's reimagining of that concept. And of course, we have anachronistically some Dragon's Breath. Oh, I do like the way they've done it though. The way the incendiary kind of cascades into the distance.
When I knew this weapon was in the game, because this was added after release as well, I was like, that's the Pancor Jackhammer. They've called it the Maelstrom, but it's the Pancor Jackhammer. I was really ready for this to be like a meme gun between us and just laugh about it. And then when I was using it, I was like, you know what? Maybe I judged you too harshly, Maelstrom. You're all right.
But no, they put a load of work into designing their own gun inspired by the original, and with such a sort of strong video game tradition, I'm kind of, despite myself, quite happy with that. I probably shouldn't be.
2025 is going to be an interesting year when you and I are talking about the merits of the Pancor Jackhammer.
What's old is new again, I guess.
Here we go.
Thank you all so much for watching. It honestly feels incredible to be back working with folks like Jonathan and making content for you guys at home. Links to support the Royal Armouries will be in the description below, and once more be sure to check out our Patreon and all of our social posts to see more of us at EXP. Like the video if you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe to EXP so you don't miss out next week's episode here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.